forest was unusually quiet that morning. Ranger Daniel walked along the familiar path beside the river, the mist clinging to the tips of pine trees and the soft sound of water flowing over rocks filling the air. He had patrolled these trails countless times before, yet something felt different today. The usual chorus of birds and rustling leaves seemed subdued, almost as if the forest itself were holding its breath. He paused, listening, feeling a shiver run down his spine. There was nothing threatening, nothing out of place, at least on the surface, but the silence was heavy, pressing. As he continued his patrol, his eyes scanned the riverbank for any signs of wildlife activity. Beavers often built their intricate dams here, deer occasionally passed through, and the occasional fox or raccoon could be glimpsed in the underbrush. But today, something unusual caught his attention. There in the midst of the massive Beaver Dam, something metallic glinted faintly, partially covered by branches and mud. It seemed out of place, unnatural, yet strangely deliberate. Daniel squinted, leaning closer, trying to make sense of it. At first, he thought it could be debris from the recent storms, but the shape was too defined, too rectangular. As he approached, he realized it was a trail camera wedged deep inside the dam. How it had gotten there was a mystery. Perhaps a storm had swept it downstream, or maybe someone had left it behind during a wildlife survey. Regardless, it was trapped, stuck in the dense network of branches and mud the beavers had meticulously built. His curiosity piqued, Daniel carefully waded into the shallow water. The mud sucked at his boots and the branches scratched at his hands as he reached into the dam. With careful precision, he pulled the camera free. It was heavier than he expected, coated in mud, waterlogged, yet surprisingly intact. He examined it, noting a faded label that indicated it had once been part of a wildlife monitoring project, though there were no other signs of origin. "This is odd," he muttered under his breath. "Why would someone leave a camera here?" His instincts, honed from years of solitary patrols in this forest, told him there was more to this than a lost wildlife camera. He placed it in his backpack and made his way back to the ranger station, feeling an unusual tension in the air. Every rustle of leaves seemed amplified, every distant bird call somehow sharper, almost accusatory. Back at the station, the familiar interior did little to calm him. Wooden walls and a low-lit desk lamp gave the room a warm glow, but the weight of anticipation made the space feel smaller, constricting. He washed the mud from his hands, removed the memory card, and inserted it into the computer. As the first frames loaded, relief washed over him. Night footage showed beavers diligently repairing the dam, dragging branches and piling mud with their characteristic efficiency. Deer wandered through the scene, moving cautiously yet gracefully. The forest's nocturnal rhythm played out exactly as it should. "Okay, normal," he whispered to himself, leaning closer to the screen. But instinct nagged at him, something was off. He replayed the footage frame by frame, listening for the softest anomalies. Branches snapped in odd places. Shadows moved in ways that didn't quite fit the patterns of wildlife. The wind could have caused the rustling, he reasoned, yet his gut told him otherwise. He shrugged and leaned back, trying to dismiss the uneasy feeling. Then the footage changed. Shadows appeared at the edge of the frame, human silhouettes moving cautiously. Daniel's heart rate spiked. He had never seen trespassers on these remote trails. The figures carried heavy bags and moved low to the ground, scanning the surroundings as they went. They were not hikers, not hunters. The way they moved was deliberate, secretive. They dug near the riverbank, shovels catching the dim infrared light from the camera. One of them paused, glancing toward the area where the camera had originally been. His movements were cautious but panicked, as if sensing the presence of something unseen. Daniel leaned forward, unable to tear his eyes from the screen. His pulse quickened. The forest he had patrolled for years now felt alien, threatening, alive with secrets he could not fully comprehend. Then, in a sudden moment of chaos, the camera slipped from its position and became trapped once again within the Beaver Dam. The intruders moved on, oblivious, leaving it wedged and silently recording. What Daniel saw next made him freeze. The intruders opened their bags, revealing weapons and numerous suspicious packages. The contents were clearly illegal, dangerous, and deliberately concealed. The realization hit him like a shockwave. The forest he had known, loved, and cared for had been the site of covert criminal activity. The implications were staggering. He could have walked right into them, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows of the forest. Hands shaking, he picked up the phone and called the authorities. His voice trembled as he explained everything he had seen: the camera, the night footage, the intruders, the packages. Every second felt like an eternity, and yet every word needed to be precise. Within minutes, the dispatcher assured him that federal agents were on the way. Daniel hung up, staring at the forest beyond the station windows. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the familiar trees, but now they seemed menacing, whispering the secrets he had uncovered. He reviewed the footage again obsessively, trying to capture every detail. Footprints along the riverbank, faint sounds of voices in the distance, subtle markings on trees, all clues pointing to a carefully concealed operation. His mind raced with questions. Who were these people? How long had they been here? What exactly were they transporting? And perhaps most pressing of all, what else had gone unnoticed? As the day faded into evening, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. The forest, which had always been a place of solace and order, now felt unpredictable, dangerous, and full of unknown threats. The simple discovery of a camera wedged in a beaver dam had revealed a hidden world of criminal activity, a world operating silently within the shadows of the wilderness. Daniel could only wait for the authorities, aware that every passing minute could allow the intruders to return, conceal their evidence further or worse. He sat quietly by the desk, the camera in front of him, replaying footage frame by frame. Every branch snapping, every movement in the shadows seemed magnified now. The serene forest of the morning had transformed into a stage for a story far darker than he could have imagined. His hands trembled slightly as he paused the footage and leaned back, taking in the gravity of what he had witnessed. The realization that a simple wildlife camera could uncover such dangerous activity left him both awed and terrified. The forest outside was quiet again, deceptively so. Yet Daniel knew the truth. Something illegal and potentially lethal had operated in these woods, and he had witnessed it all. The beaver dam, the camera, the shadows, everything had aligned to reveal a reality he could not ignore. As night approached, he resolved to stay vigilant. The forest might appear calm, but now he understood that beneath the surface, secrets waited to be uncovered, and danger could lurk in the most unexpected places. By the time night fell over the forest, Ranger Daniel was still at his station, the glow of the computer screen casting sharp shadows across the wooden walls. Every detail of the footage played in his mind, the heavy bags, the digging, the hurried movements of the intruders. He tried to eat something, but his stomach churned with anxiety. The forest, normally so familiar, now seemed alive with unseen threats. He could almost hear the soft rustle of leaves as if the shadows themselves were whispering warnings. The phone call to the authorities had been brief but urgent. "We have a situation involving illegal activity in a remote forest area," Daniel had said. "Weapons, packages, possibly more. You need to send federal agents immediately." The dispatcher assured him help was on the way. It was a small comfort, but Daniel knew it could take hours for anyone to arrive. He resolved to stay vigilant, reviewing every second of the footage, watching for details he might have missed. Footprints along the muddy riverbank, subtle breaks in the tree branches, even the faint reflection of a flashlight, each clue could be crucial. Around midnight, the first signs of action arrived. Dark SUVs navigated the winding forest road, their headlights cutting through the shadows. Federal agents emerged, tactical gear in place, their movements precise and efficient. Daniel met them at the station, explaining everything he had seen, playing the footage from start to finish. The agents exchanged glances, their expressions grave but focused, as if they were piecing together a puzzle that only he had glimpsed. One agent, a tall man with a commanding presence, leaned over the computer screen. "You did exactly the right thing by not confronting them," he said. "This operation is dangerous. We don't know the full extent of what's been happening here." His voice carried authority, but also an edge of concern that made Daniel's stomach tight. "We'll need you to guide us to the exact locations recorded in the footage. Every detail could matter." The forest outside seemed darker now, almost suffocating in its silence. Daniel led the agents back along the riverbank, pointing out landmarks visible in the footage. The beaver dam where the camera had been wedged, the muddy patches where the intruders had dug, subtle indentations in the soil suggesting the movement of heavy bags. Every step was deliberate. Even the crunch of his boots on the forest floor sounded loud in the quiet night. As they approached the dam, the agents paused. One crouched to inspect the area, shining a flashlight over the mud. "The camera was lodged here," Daniel explained, gesturing to the tangle of branches. "They tried to remove it, but it slipped back in, staying trapped. It recorded everything." The agents nodded, their faces serious, taking photographs and noting coordinates. The tension in the air was palpable. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound of animals seemed amplified, charged with potential threat. Daniel noticed one of the agents examining the riverbank more closely, pointing out what appeared to be faint footprints. "These match human boots," the agent noted. "We're dealing with organized individuals who knew the terrain well. They planned this." Daniel felt a cold chill. The forest, which had always been predictable, now harbored secrets that were both deliberate and dangerous. Returning to the station, the agents began cataloging the footage and evidence. Daniel watched anxiously as they analyzed the night clips, zooming in on every movement, every package. The initial footage of the beavers and deer now seemed almost surreal, a stark contrast to the criminal activity hidden in the shadows. He couldn't shake the thought of what might have happened had he encountered the intruders directly. He had been lucky, and the camera, seemingly innocuous, had become an unexpected shield, revealing a story that could have remained hidden indefinitely. Hours passed as the agents worked. Daniel observed their meticulous process, noting the seriousness with which each detail was handled. Maps were spread across tables, footprints measured and photographed, and the camera itself carefully inspected. "These packages," one agent said, "contain materials we need to secure immediately. The potential danger is significant. We'll need to conduct a thorough sweep of the area before nightfall." Daniel nodded, understanding that the forest would no longer feel like a safe, predictable place. During a brief lull, Daniel allowed himself a moment to reflect. The forest he had walked and worked in for years had changed in his eyes. The trails, the riverbanks, the familiar beaver dams, they were now part of a larger, more complex narrative. He had stumbled upon something he could never have imagined, a hidden operation operating quietly within his domain. And yet, the feeling of being watched lingered, subtle but persistent. He couldn't help but glance over his shoulder at the dense tree line, half expecting to see a shadow move where none should be. As dawn approached, the agents planned a full investigation. Daniel guided them to each location indicated by the footage, ensuring nothing was overlooked. They examined the riverbank meticulously, measuring dig marks and bag impressions. The beaver dam was carefully inspected to understand how the camera had become lodged and how the intruders had interacted with it. Every observation added layers to the growing understanding of the operation, revealing the level of sophistication involved. Throughout the morning, the tension never eased. Daniel found himself reflecting on the fragility of safety, even in a place he thought he knew completely. The forest, vast and seemingly serene, could hide almost anything. The camera, once a simple tool for monitoring wildlife, had become a lens into a world he could barely comprehend. He realized that his routine patrols, his years of experience, and his familiarity with the landscape had inadvertently positioned him as a witness to a potentially dangerous criminal enterprise. The weight of this knowledge was heavy, pressing, inescapable. The agents moved efficiently, cataloging every scrap of evidence. Daniel assisted wherever he could, providing local knowledge and guiding them through the terrain. He pointed out subtle signs he had noted over the years, branches broken in certain ways, paths created by wildlife that could also be used by humans, mud impressions that suggested recent passage. Every detail mattered. Each could mean the difference between uncovering the full scope of the operation and leaving dangerous elements hidden. By midday, the team had gathered enough preliminary evidence to secure the immediate area. Yet Daniel's mind remained on the footage, replaying it over and over. He noticed small movements he had previously overlooked, the glint of metal in the flashlight beam, subtle gestures indicating communication among the intruders. The level of coordination suggested this was not random, it was deliberate, organized. The forest had been quietly hosting something significant, and he had been the first to notice it, almost by accident. As the agents prepared for further investigation, Daniel stepped outside for a moment, breathing in the crisp air. The sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Everything looked peaceful, serene even, but he knew better now. Danger had walked these paths, secrets had been buried here, and although the immediate threat was being addressed, the realization that such activity could occur unnoticed left him uneasy. He returned to the station, the camera in hand, reflecting on its role in revealing what might have otherwise remained hidden. Without it, he could have passed through the forest countless times, oblivious to the dangerous operation taking place. The ordinary, unassuming tool had become a lens into an extraordinary and frightening reality. The forest, for all its natural beauty, was also a place of secrets, of hidden stories that could be uncovered only by those who observed closely, who paid attention to details others might overlook. Even as the agents secured the site and prepared for the next phase of investigation, Daniel knew his perception of the forest had changed forever. The familiar trails, the quiet streams, the rustling wildlife, all now held the memory of what had been discovered. The sense of normalcy was gone, replaced by a heightened awareness of how much the forest could conceal. The experience had been both terrifying and enlightening, teaching him that sometimes, even the most mundane landscapes could hide profound and dangerous truths. And yet, despite the fear and tension, there was a strange sense of awe. The camera, wedged in a beaver dam, had revealed a story far larger than anyone could have anticipated. A story that reminded him that vigilance, curiosity, and attention to detail could be the difference between safety and catastrophe. The forest, with all its hidden complexities, had tested him in ways he had never imagined, and he knew that the coming days would bring even more revelations as the investigation unfolded. The morning after the federal agents arrived, the forest seemed deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting intricate patterns on the forest floor, and the river gurgled gently along its banks. To any casual observer, it was a peaceful wilderness. Yet Ranger Daniel knew better. The previous night's revelations haunted every thought, every step. The camera wedged in the beaver dam had unveiled a secret world operating in the shadows. A world that had likely been hidden for weeks, maybe months. Daniel followed the agents back along the river, retracing the paths the intruders had taken. The soil still bore faint impressions where shovels had disturbed the earth, and subtle tracks suggested heavy boots had passed through recently. He pointed out every detail: broken twigs, disturbed foliage, the shallow grooves where packages had been dragged. Each observation seemed minor, yet collectively they formed a map of clandestine activity. The agents took notes meticulously, photographing each clue and cross-referencing them with the footage. Ranger thoughts. These people knew exactly where they were going. They weren't careless. They planned this. By mid-morning, the agents had begun to hypothesize about the intruders' intentions. Based on the footage and the items visible in the bags, it was clear the operation was not casual smuggling. Weapons, packages, and the careful execution suggested organization, skill, and intent. Daniel listened, absorbing the analysis, yet a nagging thought gnawed at him. The footage likely captured only a fraction of their activity. How much more had they done that he had not seen? Later that afternoon, the team discovered something unexpected. One of the packages, partially buried near a fallen log, contained documents in waterproof casing. The agents examined them cautiously, donning gloves, and handed Daniel a glance that mixed seriousness with subtle warning. "These could give us insight into who is behind this," the lead agent said. Daniel felt a mixture of curiosity and fear. He wanted to read the documents, to understand the scope, but he also recognized that mishandling even a small piece of evidence could compromise the investigation. The documents revealed coded notes, maps, and a series of names. There were references to multiple forest locations, some he recognized, others he did not. It became apparent that the intruders were operating across a wide area, and the Beaver Dam site was just one node in a larger network. Daniel felt a chill. The forest was bigger than he had imagined, and parts of it had been effectively controlled by outsiders who moved silently, carefully, and deliberately. Ranger thoughts. If they've been operating like this for weeks, maybe months, we have no idea what else is hidden out here. As evening approached, Daniel returned to the station, reviewing the footage once more. The intruders' movements became clearer with repeated viewing. They communicated silently, using gestures, carefully scanning the surroundings before acting. The heavy bags they carried were placed with precision, suggesting an awareness of weight, balance, and concealment. Every second of the footage revealed methodical planning, yet Daniel was struck by one question. Why here? Why this remote forest? That night, the agents decided to expand their investigation. They split into teams, some following potential trails, others inspecting nearby streams and smaller dams. Daniel accompanied one team, moving quietly through the underbrush, aware of every snap of a twig beneath his boots. The adrenaline, combined with lingering unease, sharpened his senses. He noted animal tracks, fallen branches, and subtle signs of human presence that the intruders had left behind. It became clear that the intruders had adapted to the forest environment with skill. Their paths avoided obvious markers, their digging minimized disturbances, and their approach to the Beaver Dam was calculated. Daniel's respect for their planning was begrudging. It heightened the danger, but it also provided insight. Understanding their methods could help the agents anticipate future movements. As they progressed deeper into the forest, Daniel's thoughts drifted to the camera itself. A simple device wedged in a beaver dam had revealed so much. It had been silent, passive, yet it captured the raw truth. He reflected on how easily it could have been destroyed or overlooked, and how different events might have unfolded if it had been. A sense of awe mixed with lingering anxiety. The forest, long a place of routine patrols and predictable patterns, had transformed into a stage for human ingenuity, secrecy, and danger. Later, one agent discovered additional footprints leading away from the riverbank into denser forest. The prints were larger, deeper, and suggested more individuals than the footage initially revealed. Daniel traced the impressions carefully, noting the direction and pace. The intruders were cautious, yet they left clues, unintentionally perhaps. Daniel's experience with the terrain allowed him to interpret these signs quickly. He realized that these individuals were not only organized, but also familiar with the forest, likely having moved through it repeatedly before. The night grew darker as the team set up temporary observation points. Infrared equipment and night vision devices captured every shadow, every movement. Daniel observed the monitors with growing unease. The forest teemed with life, yet each natural movement could be interpreted as human activity. The tension was nearly tangible, an almost physical weight pressing on them as they waited. Throughout the night, Daniel revisited the original footage, piecing together the intruders' workflow. He noticed how they approached the river cautiously, how they dug strategically near the dam, and how they seemed to operate under strict timing. The attention to detail suggested training, perhaps even professional experience. His mind raced with possibilities. Were they smugglers? Were they preparing for something more dangerous? The forest provided cover, but the risks were now glaringly apparent. By dawn, the agents and Daniel had documented every observation. They planned a more thorough sweep, ensuring no evidence was left behind. Daniel felt the forest shift around him. What had been routine paths and landmarks were now intertwined with the mystery of human intention. The Beaver Dam, once just an interesting feature in the ecosystem, had become a centerpiece in understanding the intruders' operations. Even with federal agents present, Daniel could not shake the lingering tension. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig seemed magnified. He reflected on how fragile safety was, how quickly normalcy could be disrupted, and how a single camera had unveiled a network of clandestine activity that had likely gone unnoticed for far too long. The forest, for all its beauty and serenity, had become a place of danger, secrecy, and profound revelation. By the end of Part 3, Daniel's understanding of the situation deepened. The intruders were not random trespassers. They were calculated, skilled, and potentially dangerous. The forest, which had once been a familiar ally, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets. Daniel realized that vigilance, careful observation, and respect for the terrain were crucial. The next phase of the investigation would require precision, courage, and an awareness that danger could appear where least expected. The forest had grown eerily quiet by mid-morning. Ranger Daniel followed the lead FBI agents along the riverbank, their tactical boots pressing into mud and fallen leaves. The events of the past days weighed heavily on him, the footage from the camera replaying in his mind. Intruders moving silently through the shadows, heavy bags, digging near the dam, weapons, and suspicious packages. Each detail, now analyzed, told a story of meticulous planning and dangerous intent. The agents had divided the forest into sectors, each team responsible for methodically inspecting every inch of the terrain. Daniel guided one of the teams, pointing out subtle clues only someone familiar with the area could notice. Broken branches indicating recent passage, flattened grass where bags had been set down, faint impressions in mud suggesting the weight of heavy packages. Every detail mattered. One misstep, one overlooked sign, and vital evidence could be lost. As they approached the river bend near the Beaver Dam, the tension in the air became palpable. The agents crouched, scanning the surrounding trees with binoculars and thermal cameras. Daniel's heart raced with anticipation. He had never felt the forest so alive with unseen danger. Every rustle of leaves, every flutter of wings could be interpreted as human movement. His senses, sharpened by years of solitary patrols, were on high alert. The lead agent whispered, "Stay focused. They could be watching or they could be long gone. Either way, we need to secure the area before moving further upstream." Daniel nodded, knowing the gravity of the moment. The camera had captured the intruders' activities, but it was only a small window into the larger operation. The stakes were now clear. The intruders were organized, skilled, and potentially armed. Any confrontation could be dangerous. Suddenly, a faint movement caught Daniel's eye. A shadow flickered among the trees, too deliberate to be wildlife. He pointed subtly, alerting the agents. Within seconds, tactical teams fanned out, moving silently through the forest undergrowth. The adrenaline surged through Daniel's veins as he realized this might be the moment the intruders were discovered, or the moment things could go horribly wrong. A few minutes later, the agents uncovered additional footprints leading further into dense forest. Daniel followed closely, observing subtle signs of activity: flattened moss, disturbed leaf litter, and small twigs broken in unnatural patterns. The intruders had been here before and possibly returned multiple times. The sophistication of their operation became increasingly evident. This was not random criminal activity. It was organized, coordinated, and carefully executed. By early afternoon, the agents reached a small clearing hidden by thick trees and underbrush. Here they discovered more evidence: discarded tools, partially buried packages, and fragments of documents. Daniel's stomach tightened as he realized the extent of what had been happening under the forest's surface. The intruders had not only dug near the dam, they had created a network of hidden caches, carefully concealed from casual observers. One agent called out, "We're going to sweep the surrounding area. Any movement, any sound, reported immediately." Daniel felt a shiver. Even with federal support, the danger was real. They moved in careful formations, scanning the tree line using infrared equipment to detect any presence. Every branch snapping underfoot sounded like a warning, every distant rustle a potential threat. The forest that had once been familiar now seemed like a labyrinth of secrets and shadows. Hours passed as they documented, cataloged, and secured the evidence. Packages were carefully collected, weapons secured, and documents cataloged for later investigation. Daniel observed the process, realizing how crucial his initial discovery had been. Without the camera trapped in the Beaver Dam, none of this would have come to light. The forest had concealed a dangerous operation, and only by chance, or perhaps fate, had he stumbled upon it. Later, while the agents reviewed the evidence, Daniel returned to the riverbank to inspect the Beaver Dam once more. The structure, once merely a home for wildlife, had become a silent witness to criminal activity. He traced his fingers along the wet branches, recalling the moment he first discovered the camera wedged inside. It seemed impossible that such a simple device could have captured a story of such magnitude. As evening approached, the investigation reached a crucial point. The lead agent gathered the team and reviewed the strategy. They planned to secure the remaining caches, interview potential witnesses in the surrounding area, and coordinate with local authorities to ensure no further movement by the intruders. Daniel felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the implications of what he had uncovered would reverberate for weeks, perhaps months. In the final hours of the day, Daniel reflected on the events. The forest had changed in his perception. What had been routine patrols and predictable trails now held layers of danger, secrecy, and unseen human intent. The camera, wedged in a beaver dam, had revealed a truth he could never have imagined. It was a reminder of the fragility of safety, the importance of vigilance, and the hidden stories that even the most familiar landscapes could hold. By nightfall, the forest seemed to settle once more. The river flowed quietly, the beavers went about their work, and the shadows lengthened across the clearing. Daniel stood at the edge of the water, staring at the beaver dam. He felt a profound sense of awe at the chain of events that had unfolded from a single, seemingly insignificant discovery. And yet, beneath that awe was a lingering unease. He knew the forest still held secrets, and that the story he had uncovered was only one thread in a much larger, more complex web of human activity hidden among the trees. As he returned to the station, the glow of the computer screen illuminated the evidence they had secured. The packages, weapons, and documents, all carefully cataloged, told a story of human ingenuity, secrecy, and danger operating under the forest's quiet surface. Daniel realized that his role as a ranger had evolved. He was no longer just a guardian of trails and wildlife. He had become a witness to something far larger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Even after the agents left, coordinating further investigations, Daniel could not shake the sense of vigilance. Every rustle, every shadow, every faint sound reminded him of what had transpired. The forest, with all its beauty and tranquility, had proven capable of hiding profound threats. And while immediate danger had been mitigated, the lessons of that discovery, the value of observation, attention to detail, and courage, would stay with him forever. In the quiet hours of the night, Daniel sat by the computer, reviewing the camera footage one last time. The beavers moving through the dam, the deer passing by, the intruders silently digging and placing their packages. It all seemed surreal now. A simple trail camera wedged in a beaver dam had transformed an ordinary forest patrol into a life-changing revelation. He knew the forest would never feel the same again, and that the events he had witnessed would shape his understanding of the wilderness forever. The final thought that lingered in his mind, as the moonlight reflected off the river, was a sober reminder. The forest was vast, the unknown was endless, And sometimes, the most innocent of discoveries could reveal the darkest of secrets. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey into the forest's hidden secrets. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more shocking discoveries, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.